Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I'll be flipping the Tonic Craft Kit's Winter Star Advent box. This would be number 47. And I'll give a quick look at the cards that I make in this video. I did timestamp the videos, so if there is a particular card that you want to see, you can go ahead and jump straight to that section. You'll find the timestamps in the description box and I believe on the video timeline as well. The first two cards, they do look the same, but one is actually a flat card and the other one is a layered card. I thought it would be fun to sort of try to create the same style of card, but in a couple of different ways. And as you can see, here is my pop-up card, which does actually pop out of the card a little bit. I guess I just didn't dry fit it, and I thought that it would fit in a 5x7, but if you're gonna create something similar to that, I would use a 6x6 card base or larger. So let's start off with my flat card. What I'll do is, and what I've already done actually, is I've taken all of the numbered dies that are included in this die set, and I've die cut them out of foam. And I'm going to be using that as stamps. So I first start off by stamping the number 25 in white pigment ink, and I'm going to white heat emboss over top of that. I just like to double up on the white just to make sure that I get a really bright white. And I am using the Craft Perfect card that does come in the kit, but I'm stamping on the smooth side as opposed to the textured side. And instead of using my Versamark clear ink, I'm actually, I just discovered this not too long ago and I'm loving it. It's actually Versamark Dazzle. And it has a sort of frosty look to it. And I just think that it's really a cool effect because similar to the clear ink, it does sort of darken the existing color cardstock if you were to stamp and emboss this onto color card, but it has this really neat effect where if you tilt it at certain angles, you'll sort of see a more frosty look to it. It's actually pretty neat, but of course if you don't have that, you could definitely use a clear embossing ink and then use clear embossing powder over top. And so that's what I've done. I've used the Versamark Dazzle and then just clear embossing powder. And you can see as I tilt it and the light catches it in different ways, you'll sort of see a little bit of that almost silver look to it. But if you tilt it at other angles, it just looks like a darker blue. So I'll go ahead and attach this panel to my card blank, which is a US A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And for the sentiment, I'm using my Dymo label to just create a simple Merry Christmas sentiment. I thought that it would be a nice little touch to finish off this card. So that is my first card complete, my flat card, and I think it turned out pretty cute. So I love these numbers, I love the font and the size of it as well. So now I'll recreate the same thing, but as a layered card. So with the 25, I die cut that out of white card, and I did layer this up quite a bit. So I'm gonna ultimately have, I think, 4 layers of the 25. And so that's going to be the kind of the thickest sort of layer. And I just like in my flat card, I positioned the 25 first because I want everything else to sort of center around that. And then I'm just going to randomly place the rest of my die cuts, which were cut out of the exact same colored cardstock as the card base. And this time I am using the textured side. I used the smooth side because it was easier to stamp on and get a nice full clear impression. But on this side, I don't need to stamp on it, so I'm actually using the textured side. And I'm making sure to sort of stagger my numbers a little bit and try to be as random as possible in dispersing the numbers. And I'm also hanging some of the numbers off of the edge to make it look a little bit more organic, as if this was a larger panel that's just been cut down to size. And again, this is a USA 2 size card, so 4¼ by 5½. And I'm not being too particular about lining these up perfectly. I don't actually really mind it so much if it's not exactly straight across. And so I just go ahead and keep on going with this. I did also make both of these cards in a red variation as well. And because I have so much leftover red cardstock, just scraps, I did die cut with the red extra numbers so that I could layer up on some of the numbers, even though they are part of the background. I thought it would be a neat effect to have some of the numbers be, 1 or 2 layers thick, and some just being, a little bit more flat to the card. And it almost has the look of being more of a 3D embossed. And this is a little bit of a faux embossed technique because you do get that extra texture. But when you add a couple of layers on top, then you almost get a 3D effect because some of the layers are a little bit higher than others. And of course, the 25, I leave that to be sort of the highest level or the thickest on the card itself. So I didn't do that with this card because I didn't know whether I would have enough blue cardstock left, because after using the blue card for both of the card panels and all of these letters, I really didn't have too much left over, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to use it on any of my later cards as well, so I wanted to save myself a little bit. But I actually may go back and add a couple more layers to some of these numbers so that I can get a little bit more of that 3D effect that I got with my red card. And again, I'm using my Dymo label to create my sentiment, which is very simple Merry Christmas. And in this case, I actually split it up. And then I'm taking that same Versamark Dazzle and just very gently grazing it across the top so that it just catches. And again, this creates a similar look to our flat card. But instead of heat embossing, all I did was just use the Versamark itself and just let that air dry. So I didn't put any of the clear embossing powder over top, but you still get that sort of distressed look to it. And I love how that turned out. And here's the red version where I did have higher levels on some of the numbers. And you see that with the Versamark Dazzle. So onto another layered card. So here what I've done is I've just die cut one of the triangular patterns. This was one of the Verso dies that can be used to decorate your star box. And I just die cut that in a row across my scrap piece of paper here and used it as a stencil. So I'm stenciling that pattern as a border, and I'm using the glacier paste that came in the kit. Initially I was just going to leave it at that, but the glacier paste looks really nice and frosty, so I decided that I'll just go ahead and scrape that across the entire panel, just to give that a little bit more texture and integrate that sort of look of the glacier paste within the entire panel, not just the borders. And so I'll let that dry as I prepare everything else. So I did already stamp out winter wishes, and I have a rectangular rounded corner set of nesting dies that I've used from my stash, so that didn't actually come in the kit. But the twine does come in the kit, so I thought that I would go ahead and wrap my card panel with a little bit of twine just to have yet another texture. So the way that I wrap twine is I like to put a little bit of double-sided adhesive on the back side on both corners, and then I just loop it back and forth. And instead of going completely around the back side, I just fold it over and then go right across the front again. So it saves you a little bit of twine. That way you don't have to waste it going across the full back where nobody's going to see. And I'm using a 1/2-inch glue dot to secure the twine behind where my sentiment is going to be. And I'll cut myself some foam here because I don't happen to have any white foam at the moment, and this is how I make myself foam strips. So I just take a full sheet of foam that has adhesive backing. I use a double-sided adhesive strip, and then I just cut along those strips so that there's adhesive on both sides. Now, I thought that I might put a little snowman that I created in advance using the glitter accents, but I felt like with the look of the twine and everything else that the snowman being so cutesy doesn't really fit. So instead, I'll just use some of these die-cut snowflakes that I have cut in advance, and I just use the various colored specialty card that does come in the kit just to create a nice little assortment of snowflakes. And then I'm going to put foam all along the backside of my panel here. Because there is the little bit of dimension with the twine, I thought this would sit a little bit better if I actually put some foam back there. And then I'm using the foam that I die cut my number stamps from to put in the center, and that just makes everything a little bit more level and flush. And since there's adhesive all along the border, I didn't really think I needed adhesive on the center sections of foam. That's more there just to make everything level so that the center of the card doesn't collapse inward. And so I'll go ahead and adhere my snowflakes. I do want to layer them up a little bit and put some of them on top of my little sentiment die cut here, and then some are going to rest behind it. And because the ones that are going to be on top of the sentiment are a little bit raised because my sentiment does have some foam on it, I'm going to use my 3D Kalau glue gel to just put some behind the portions of the snowflake that actually hang off of the sentiment, and that way they can be secured, but they'll be slightly raised on top of the card. It's such a small area that it's really hard to get foam in those snowflake portions, and so the 3D glue gel is really great for that, because you can have that dimension and you can put it exactly where you need and to the height that you need as well. So this is going to be my interactive card, and I've already cut a piece of the handmade cotton as my background panel, and it's just really gorgeous, the color of this panel. And I'm going to make a shaker card using the ornaments. So there are 3 dies in this sort of ornament shape. There's one that cuts out the outline, and I've used that to die cut 2 pieces of acetate. So one piece of acetate is going to sit on the back, and these are the shaker fills. So the silver tinsel sequin came in the kit, and the crystal cloud circles came from my stash. I really like the cloud circles because they have a little bit of that iridescent finish, and being circular, they sort of fit in a little bit with the handmade cotton paper. And it almost creates a little bit of an optical illusion, because at some angles, those cloud circles look like they're the same color as the handmade cotton paper, but when you tilt it just right, you do get, the different rainbow colors from that iridescent finish. So I've filled in my ornament, and then I'm going to put another layer of acetate over top. So now my shaker is completely filled and see-through all the way front to back, and I've die cut the ornament out of one of the pearlescent cards as well. And so to die cut this with the aperture in the center, you just combine the two largest ornament dies. There is a smaller one, but I didn't end up using that. And because my acetate on the top layer did not cut all the way through, I actually have a little bit of acetate that I can just insert some of the glitter card right where that little hole is at the top, and it just so happens to be the exact same shape as the gemstones that we got in the kit. And I thought it would really make this ornament look special to place that gemstone right in that opening at the top there. And so I have a couple of extra die cuts of the ornament. This is using just the largest ornament die, and I die cut it out of the silver cardstock that comes in the kit. And I'm going to use a couple of sentiments. I don't know exactly which ones, but I did stamp out Noel, Peace, and Joy. Those three are in the same font and same size. So they're kind of small, but they're really nice for this application. I thought just something nice and subtle, and I'll be placing them right over top of my ornaments. And I thought about using all three, but in the end, I just put sentiments over top the two silver ornaments. I thought that I couldn't find a good spot to put a sentiment over the shaker ornament, so I thought I would just leave that off. So I did end up only using Peace and Joy on this card. And so I'll just go ahead and kind of fidget around with placement a little bit. And initially I didn't think I would line all three up side by side, but I figured that because my shaker is actually see-through all the way, if I tried to orient the two silver ornaments a little bit wonky and have them overlap a little, you'll actually see some of that silver specialty card behind the shaker ornament. And so I decided that I'll try to space them out so that there's no overlap, and it just so happened that it fit perfectly all straight across. I did put the shaker ornament slightly higher than the other two just to make it stand out even more. But I really like how this turned out. I don't usually make a lot of shaker cards. I think it's been a while, so it was nice to make a little shaker. This is my last card. It's my pop-up card, and I've just die cut the pentagon a couple times, but before die cutting, I did put some double-sided adhesive onto just some white cardstock, and on two of them I peeled off the paper liner and covered it with the glitter that came in my kit, and on the third one I am adhering some silver gilding flakes on top, because the front of my card is going to have a very blue and silver finish, so I'll kind of mimic that with these hexagon or pentagon tiles. And on the fourth tile is where I stamped out my sentiment for the front of the card. So the actual card panel itself, I didn't film myself making, but basically all I did was take the glacier paste that came in the kit, and then I just scraped that across the front, and then with another sort of amount of glacier paste, I mixed in some of the blue glitter so that I would have some of that same blue in my background as well, and then scrape that across the card panel. So the card panel I did start off with just a white card panel, and so the glacier paste by itself is rather subtle. You kind of have to tilt it to sort of see that shine. But in the second layer where I mixed in some of the blue glitter, then you really start to see some of that come across. So here again, I'm going to cut out some foam strips, and I'll be attaching my panel with foam because I did use so much glacier paste. I mean, it's not a thick amount. It was a scraping, but I did scrape across the entire panel. There's not 100% coverage, but my card panel did warp a little bit. So I'm just gonna be a little bit generous with my foam, and that should straighten most of that warping out once this goes onto my card base. So I used the star box die, and I just trimmed off all the portions that kind of create the box, all the dimensionality of the box. And I just left myself the star as well as the two little flaps that close your box. And I guess when I did the dry fitting for this, I think those two little tabs were folded, and so you can see my star actually hangs outside my card a little bit, so it pops out of the card a little. So that's why if you were going to do this, I would definitely recommend a larger card. Maybe a 6x6 would work. You'll have to play around with that a little bit. But I only put glue on those two little tabs and attach them to the front and the back, so that when you open it, you have this card or the star that pops out. I love the little verso die of the little star that I have in that bottom corner there, because there's actually I didn't notice this at first, but the verso pattern actually has a little butterfly in it, which I thought was super, super cute. It's nice and subtle, but really, really cute. So I'll go ahead and cut a couple more strips of foam here, because I'm going to attach some of, the hexagon or pentagon that has my sentiment on it, I'll attach with foam so that it's more raised than the others, and so it becomes a little bit more prominent. And then I'll go ahead and configure the other tiles around it. And I do, as I mentioned before, like to, whenever I use die cuts or stamped image backgrounds, I do like to go right off of the edge. That way it kind of looks like it's more organic and it's not completely boxed in. And since I do already have my card panel attached, and the card panel itself is a little bit smaller than my card base, which is a 5x7 card base. And so I had to take a little snip so that I know exactly where to cut off the edge. But I like how this card turned out ultimately. Usually I like to have something about the front of the card mimic what's going to pop up when you open the card. That's not really the case here, but I still think it turned out really well, except for the fact that the tip of my star is popping out of my card. So, oops. But in the spirit of this being a handmade card, I will still use it this season, and I'll send it out to somebody who will appreciate little faux pas like that. So, but you can see there the little star that I have and that little butterfly design. So that is my last card, and here's a final recap of all of the cards that I made using this kit. So my first card here is a flat card where I used Versamark Dazzle and Clear embossing powder to create that background. And a similar card created using die cuts instead of stamps, and layering up those die cuts so you get all of that nice dimension. And I still used the same Versamark Dazzle just to graze the top of those die cuts, which bring a little bit more of a highlight to them and makes them stand out a little bit. And I love how that distressed look comes off. This is another layered card, just using the Verso dies. Even though it's small, you can do repeat die cutting to create a fun little border that you can use as a stencil, and then just using some of the twine and snowflakes to layer up. And I did finish that off with some sequins. And then here's my interactive shaker card with some of the sequin filled into the ornament and one of the gemstones, just to make that ornament stand out a little bit and make it a little bit more special. And then my final card is a pop-up card. Again, I finished that off with some sequins just sprinkled across the top. And then when you open it, you have the star with some of the verso designs that come in the kit and a stamped sentiment with Merry Christmas and Santa and his reindeers flying through the sky. So those are the cards that I made using this kit. If you like this video, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you want to catch new videos as they get posted, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Thanks so much, and until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye!